In this episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast, we're going to be talking about a lot of cool things. Talking about triathlons. I got Bevan here, who has run a lot of triathlons. And on top of that, is most of the guests on this show, he's turned his passion into a business, been able to, do podcasts, make some money from it, which is always very exciting for me. So first off, Bevan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's all good, mate. How you going?
I'm doing great. So tell us your story a little bit. How did you get involved with triathlons? What led you down this path?
Well, I'm sure, you said before the show that you're kind of like the self-improvement story, and I'm one of those. So I was very much a kind of a drop kick. I left school with no qualifications at all. Like I couldn't even spell. I couldn't spell the. I remember going to the doctor and not even be able to fill out a form. And I kind of went down this, so I left school at 15 with no qualifications at all. And I kind of went down this really destructive life of drugs and alcohol and anything I do to the extreme. So I was kind of in this place where, if I was going to get stoned, it was how messy could you get? Or if I was going to get drunk, the objective was just to destroy yourself in this kind of lifestyle. And so I went down that path for a few years, and there was a few kind of epiphany moments where I realized this wasn't probably, a place to really, be in your life. And at that moment, music was, I played guitar a little bit, and but in that moment, one of my friends kind of said to me, you're good at the guitar. And it was the only thing in life, like I'd always been a sporty kid, but guitar was the only thing I'd ever actually practiced to get good at. And whereas sport, I was kind of naturally good at sport. And so I kind of started playing guitar. And I remember one day one of my friends said to me, you're really good at guitar. And this was around the period of time when I kind of realized I needed to give up drugs and alcohol. And I kind of thought to myself, well, why am I good at guitar? And it was just a really simple thing that I enjoyed it so much, and I practiced a lot. And it was just a really kind of simple thing or way of looking at it. And so I kind of thought, well, if I can practice this, why can't I practice other areas of my life? And so I kind of had this epiphany, and it really shifted the direction of my life. So within 3 or 4 months, I literally gave up drugs cold turkey and alcohol cold turkey. I haven't really touched either since. And then I started to get into sport again. And at that time, I actually joined a gym, and I started to get a career in fitness. And I was very fortunate to achieve some pretty big goals pretty quickly in my career. But the one thing you discover with fitness is it's always about other people. And so after about doing fitness for about 3 or 4 years and kind of, achieving things I never thought I could achieve, I got to a point where I was a bit stale in my own fitness because it was always about helping others, which I loved, but there was this kind of need for me to grow through fitness myself. And so I started doing some local sporting events, like I did like a half marathon, and then I did a marathon, then I did some cycle races, and none of them were really, like I really enjoyed them, and I did quite well because I did so much fitness, but they were never really the ultimate challenge that I was looking for. And one day I went to my physiotherapist, and they said to me, if you want a challenge, you need to do an Ironman. And I didn't really know much about Ironman at the moment, but I thought, well, bugger it, I'll do it. And then about 10 months later, I did my first Ironman, and I did everything wrong. So if you think of what you need to do to be successful, I did everything wrong. And I got to about halfway through the marathon. So for those who don't know, an Ironman's 3.8K swim, you bike 180 Ks, and then you run a marathon at the end of that. And I got halfway through the marathon, and my body just gave up. Literally, if I bent my knees, I collapsed. So the only way I could run was to lock my joints out and just to run with locked joints the whole time. And I got to, I finished, with 20 Ks of running with locked joints, admittedly it was slow running. I managed to get to the finish line, and I just remember thinking, wow, this is the biggest challenge I've ever faced. And for me, it just ignited a flame of, well, how can I get better at this challenge? And so for the next period of my life, that was very much what my life was about.
Wow. Okay. So a lot of things I want to dig in there. That's a powerful story. I'm curious, and if you don't want to share, we don't have to go too deep, but what was...
honestly, you get it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you talked about the drugs and alcohol. Was there... Other than someone saying you're, good at guitar, your friend saying you're good at guitar, was there other epiphanies? Like how? Cause I have a lot of friends that have been involved in drugs and alcohol, and as the outside, I kind of want to shake them and say like, hey, like this isn't right for you. But what was it for you?
Yeah, there were 3 defining moments for me. One was again, I was the guy who had, like, literally people would write dickhead on my forehead, when I was asleep at a party. I was that guy. And so I had no respect for my peers or for my world, really. But I remember So, and to be honest, for my group of friends at that time, we didn't really have high standards. So it wasn't like we had high morals and high standards. We were all pretty much destructive people who didn't really, would do anything for a high or for our own kind of personal pleasure. And I remember one time I went out on the town, and even one of my mates who was very much like me, the next day just said, "You're just an embarrassment, mate, going out for you. You're just such an embarrassment to be around." And that was kind of a hard thing to hear. And then the second thing was my best friend at the time, a guy called Mark, him and I just got stoned 24/7. And the funny thing about when you're in this place of drugs is you don't necessarily identify that you have a problem or that you're a druggie. Like, I was stoned or drunk pretty much nearly every waking hour of my life. And while that was true, I never identified that I was a druggie. And I remember one night, me and my mate Mark were kind of off our face, and he just turned to me and said, "You realise we're druggies?" And that really hit me hard, because although all the evidence of my life showed me this was the case, I didn't self-identify. And then once he said that, it was like, wow, that's so obvious. And then the third one, which really, this was the defining moment, was I had an LSD trip that went really bad. And it was a very high dosage of LSD. And I had this experience where I was around all my best friends, when late teens, when I was about 19 at the time. And I was with all my best friends. Now, LSD is a very dangerous drug because it, enhances things, and you kind of perceive things that may not be there. And suddenly I'm with all my best friends, and I felt in danger. I felt threatened. And these guys weren't threatening me, but just because I was on this drug, I felt really threatened. And I thought to myself, I just need to get out of this place. Now, LSD is a drug. If you get a high dosage, it can last for like 6 hours, and I'm like 30 minutes into the experience here. And so I kind of got out of there, and I went home, and I picked up my guitar, played my guitar for a little bit. And after a while, I started to think of everybody in my life, and I thought of all my good mates who, like me, were kind of drop kicks. And I thought, in this moment, I saw all the solutions to their problems. So, like, I remember my mate Mark, I thought, because Mark was quite an intelligent guy, he was quite a good sportsman, but he was kind of not going to university, and he was failing with sport. And I kind of thought, if Mark could just do these 2 or 3 things, his life's going to be pretty phenomenal. And I kind of, for the next hour, I kind of had all the answers to everybody in my life for how their life could be successful. And then after an hour, I thought, what about me? And it was like the first time in my life where I really saw myself for what I was. Like, I was a low-skilled, vulnerable, insecure young man who was ultimately just destructive to myself, my world, and those around me. And actually, that moment, I was just like, well, what's my path? And I talk about giving up drugs and alcohol. Well, the next week I went cold turkey. I just totally gave them up. I went and did spelling lessons. I did spelling lessons with 5-year-olds sitting next to me. That's when I got back into sport, back into music, and all of those types of things. So those were the 3 kind of moments for me.
That's, very interesting moments. And I can see why they'd have such a profound effect on you.
Yeah, well, but then the really cool thing about it is, so when you come from kind of nothing and you discover growth, it's so easy to jump on board because the reward is so obvious. So, like, I really had no experience of me working at growth in my life. And then when you suddenly start doing this, it just, suddenly you're achieving things. Suddenly opportunity comes to you. Suddenly your self-perception shifts so much. And so your belief in your ability to overcome adversity becomes so strong. Like, even things like going out dancing sober was a really big thing to overcome, because I'd never dance if I was sober. And then you overcome that thing. And so every time you overcome the things that had held you back in the past, your confidence grows, and then your belief that you can overcome more bigger things grows. And so it actually becomes, really quite an awesome experience.
Let's go back to that. So you said the next week you kind of just quit drugs and alcohol cold turkey. What else changed in your life? You mentioned going and taking spelling classes. Was there other steps that you took forward?
Yeah, so luckily in that moment I kind of knew fitness was my love. Fitness and music have always been fitness, people, and music are my passions. And so, that guitar story I talked about before was one of the things, but kind of everything. Like, so for example, there's things I look back on now, and it's fascinating that I made those choices, and they were such good choices that I didn't necessarily consciously make. So for example, I had to lose my friends overnight. Not because they were bad people, but I wasn't a strong enough person to not be around drugs. Sure, I might have lasted a week, but if I really wanted to be away from drugs, like I can't be in an environment where that's the culture of that environment. And luckily for me, I joined a gym at that, like within the next few weeks, and I just met a new group of people, and these people were people who were, ambitious, wanted to grow, had goals. Some really good mentors in there for me as well. So one of the big things is I just kind of lost all my friends, and in some ways, that, to be honest, I'm gonna be really honest, it actually wasn't hard because of what I replaced it with, and it was really fascinating because most of my friends who were my druggie friends would come up to me in the next period of time asking how I can help them through that, and some I could and some I couldn't, but so that was one of the big things. Just this kind of, I love this idea of, the evolution of self. And I think at that moment, that's what I discovered, was this idea of, your job in this life is just to keep evolving and ultimately evolve yourself. And then, through time I've learned it's about evolving others as well. But, so basically anything that would help me grow. So I started to, once I started to read, I understood the power of books. So the library became my new best place to hang out, and I read every book I get my hand on, and just started learning and growing and challenging myself, I suppose.
You said that some of your friends came to you for help. I guess what was the difference between the friends you were able to help and the ones that you weren't able to help?
I think they've got to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, as you said earlier, that we know, we have our friends, and we can often see the path for other people, can't we? But it's not until that moment where they can see the path. And some of my friends just weren't ready. And to be honest, some of those people are still in that life right now, and maybe they'll never be ready. But then other friends, I had a friend, that my mate Mark, it took him probably another 7 years to get there, but now he's doing really well in life, and he's someone I really admire. And so for me, it was kind of like, how do I help people be ready? And at that moment in my life, I probably wasn't that good at it. Whereas nowadays, the whole idea of how to help people change is very much my kind of life's work, I suppose. And so through exercise, but that's some of the lessons I've learned now, I probably would be much more equipped to help those types of people. But I don't know if I was actually that successful. But maybe them seeing me change, maybe open them up to the possibility of doing it themselves.
And you still work with clients, like as far as training clients nowadays, right? I think, or
Yeah, so I kind of, my whole life is kind of fitness and people and music. And so I have a running business in New Zealand. We're New Zealand's biggest running business, and it's kind of like group training packages, but we've really tried to target the beginner exercises. So, if we look at the fitness industry, one of the biggest problems with the fitness industry is we're really good at helping fit people, but we suck for those who aren't fit. If we look at society right now, what's happening in society is that we're getting less active and more overweight. And now there's many factors that that happens, but one of the biggest, the fitness industry has to take some responsibility for that, because sure, we can look at what's happening with food and so on, but our job is to get people moving. And one of the biggest problems I see in the fitness industry is that fit people create products for fit people. So if we look at what's big in the industry right now, it's HIIT training, it's CrossFit, it's just real high-end, intense workout. Now, for someone like me who's exercised for 20 years, day in, day out at a high level, I love it. Wrap me around that stuff. I want that. I need that kind of self. But for someone who's never exercised, if you take them to that, they're going to fail.
yeah.
And they're going to fail massively, which reinforces, because they come into it thinking they're bad at exercise. They come into it going, I suck at exercise. So if this person goes into a CrossFit workout thinking they suck at exercise, we're setting them up to fail. So then what happens is they move away from that experience where they failed, reinforcing, I'm never going to be good at exercise. And that's not good for the health of humanity, if you know what I mean. Like, that's not good for everyone. Now, it's good for the fit person, but for me, as I kind of progressed through my career, it's like, well, if you're a fit person, there's a million good products out there. They all work. They're all great. But if you're not fit, how do we help that person? And so about 5 or 6 years ago, we started a business called Get Up to 5, or our overall business is called Extra Mile Runners, but we started a product called Get Up to 5. And it was designed to help the person who's failing. And it's a completely different product. It's totally different. Like, we train our coaches. If you're telling someone to work harder, you're not doing your job. Because what their needs are completely different. And what I've learned by helping those people have been, it's like, I've learned lessons I would never learned if I just kept on trying to help fit people get fitter.
So what's the, I guess, a different approach? So because you're right, I guess I don't really think a lot about helping people that just aren't good at it? What is the difference between helping someone, I guess, that's already fit, and helping someone like that has failed before? Like, what do you have to do differently?
So the one thing that's really important is what I call the entry point. So when we think about any area of growth in our life, often the biggest problem for people who are trying to change is the entry point's way above their current ability. So I don't personal train so much nowadays, but when I personal trained, you'd see someone would come in, and what they think of is they think of the result they desire. So let's say I want to lose 10 kg, okay, I need to lose 10 kg. Now, what a lot of people do is they kind of think of who in my life is at that weight, or what's the fastest way to get there. So they might look at their mate who's 10 kgs lighter than them and say, well, they run 4 times a week and they do weights twice a week and so on and so on. So they think about the result and what's the fastest way to get to a result. And I would see this as a young personal trainer. People would come to me and they go, okay, I want to lose 10 kg. And I go, what do you think you can do? I can do 4 sessions a week and I can do this and that. And they were never going to be able to do that. The entry point is way below what they think they can do. So, but the problem is they look at the result and they think, well, how do I get the result? And to me, the most important thing we should all identify when we're starting to try to grow is, where am I right now? So when we set up our business, we kind of thought to ourselves, well, who's our target market? And our target market, we're really kind of females between the ages of 30 to 55 who have an experience of failing with exercise. What is our entry point for that person? Well, they've probably done no exercise for a long time. So the entry point is nothing. Walking is the entry point. Getting them to do an easy walk is the entry point. What other things do we need to consider? They're probably very insecure and vulnerable around exercise. So the first thing we need to establish is, where am I right now in this area? And it's really important for a few reasons. A, if we can understand your entry point, then we can set a correct growth path that's going to let you be successful along the way. I'll go into that in a second. But the second reason it's really important is we have a comparison point that we can work against. Because one of the biggest problems for people who are trying to grow and have insecurity around growth is they compare themselves unfairly, so they can never win. So if I'm new to exercise, or if I've failed for 10 years and I've tried CrossFit and I failed, and then I tried a new thing, well, I'm coming into it with comparisons of failure. Or I look to all my friends, even when I'm succeeding, I go, well, they're better than me, I'm not good enough. So this kind of comparison works against me. But one thing we try to really get our people to work on is, when did you start at the beginning of this growth period? And the only comparison you're allowed to do is to look at that start point. So for someone who's come from doing nothing, they're 35 years old, they've done nothing for 20 years, when they get to week 3 and they're suddenly doing, maybe let's say 3 minutes of walking and maybe a minute and a half of very light jogging and doing a few sets of that, we say, look at how far you've come from your start point. And that way, the comparison is only ever based on, so they can see and own their growth along the way, not feel bad because they're never good enough. And I'm a really big believer in this kind of, what is your start point and, your kind of entry point as well. And then the second thing that's really important about having the right entry point is, if you can put the right people around you, they can set up a wise path for growth. So now, once we understood our beginner people, and we understood we'll call the entry point is going to be nothing. How do we grow them? So the first thing we did, we needed them to come along and experience in their first few sessions that they could win. So we're trying to build their belief in their ability in doing that. So we determined that for somebody who's never done exercise in a long time, an entry point that they can come along and do is, we do a very basic body weight strength workout, which is, no gear, basic squats, very low intensity, but just gets them moving through strength. And then we do a walk-run session. And the walk-run starts at 3.5 minutes of just casual walking, conversation walking. There's no intensity in the walking. And then we do 30 seconds of stupidly light running. And we literally say that if you're breathing hard, you're going too fast. You should be able to hold a conversation. We just want you to feel stupidly light in this run. And we get them to do 7 sets of that. And our coaches go around and manage that. So we're going around managing, no, slow down, you're going too fast. But they go, well, I can walk fast. We don't care. We just want you to be able to do 30 seconds of light running. And what happens is they come along to that session and they do the first session. And now, this is one of the big differences between the fit person. So when we look at research for really fit people, ultimately all they want from the workout is intensity. Like for someone like me, if I haven't had an intense workout, I kind of disappointed in myself. Now for the new exerciser, that's the worst thing you can give them. What they want to feel is that I can be successful today. So what we do is, in that first session where they come along, they do basic easy strength workout, then they do 3.5 minutes of casual walking, followed by 30 seconds of stupidly light running. At the end of the session, they've succeeded. And what happens in that moment, and we repeat that session 3 times, so they do it 3.5 minutes, 30 seconds, 3 times. And what happens in that moment is they go, man, I can definitely do the next session. And they feel good because they've won today. And what happens is we kind of sit them at that level for about a week. And that's it. They do 3 sessions at that level, and they kind of build their confidence that, hey, I know I can do this. And then what happens is we make sure that the stretch of the next period is correct. Now, this is where a lot of people go wrong in growth. Is that I'll give you a good example. So years ago, I had a flatmate who wanted to play the guitar, and I was really keen to teach him the guitar. So I got him a guitar. I taught him a real basic song, a good entry point song, if you get what I mean. And he came back and he'd nailed it. And I got really excited. And so next thing I taught him like a Led Zeppelin song, I tried to teach him a song that was well above. And he gave up the guitar. Now, as a mentor and someone who's trying to grow him, I failed him in that moment because ultimately I should have understood, where does he need to grow next? And that's what we think about what we're doing is we go, okay, well, we've now got them a week at this level and they've had 3 sessions, so they know they can do this. What's the right stretch that we need to add on their growth path that allows them to feel that they could do next week and they can be successful next week? So in the second week, we go down to something like 3 minutes of walking and they go to 45 seconds of jogging. Now, physiologically, that's really good because we're creating a good pathway to develop their movement, especially for newer exercises. But actually, it's really important for their belief because they have 3 sessions where they go, well, I did 30 seconds, 45 seconds is a bit scary, but I know I can do it. And then what we do is as the weeks progress, we just kind of keep that stretch at the right level to the point where at the end of it, they're running 5Ks and they look back and they go, I can't believe 30 seconds was easy. But what we've actually done is we've developed their belief in themselves. Because one thing I really believe is that, nowadays we live in this time where we talk about belief being, you should just believe that I can achieve anything. And it's just a lie. No one believes they can achieve everything. What belief is belief comes from experience that is close to the level I am at right now. So belief, when we get someone to do 3 sessions at that 30 seconds, they believe they can do 45. When we get into 3 sessions at 45, they believe they can do a minute. When they believe they can do, when I've done 3 at a minute. So as their experience grows with their success, their belief in their ability grows. And I'm like, so our business, we've taken people, we've got the 5K business, but we go right up to half marathons. We've trained thousands of people from doing nothing. These people have failed with exercise to do half marathons. And it's through these types of thinkings that actually help these people to be successful. And then ultimately we create lifetime exercises, and that's our goal.
There's what you're doing is genius. I love it because it's something that when people tell me that haven't worked out for a long time, this is exactly what I tell them to do. I'm like, all right, especially since it's New Year's right now, time of this recording, and people are like, oh, I want to lose a bunch of weight. I want to do this and that. And they have this whole like, all right, well, I haven't been working out for the last few years. I'm going to start going to the gym and I'm going to do this. I'm like, no. Your goal should just be to go to the gym, walk on the treadmill. Like exactly like you're saying. I'm like, that's success. If you do anything extra, well, I don't know, that's whatever, but like your goal should be, or I've even told people just all you should do, put on those clothes, go inside and touch the gym. That's it. Like just getting the habit of getting out of your house and going to the gym is the hard part.
Well, it's really interesting. I'm creating an online version of our 5K product right now, which we'll bring about in April. And the first week of it is learning to get out the door. So we're not even that concerned about the exercise. It's how do you learn? Like for someone who's exercised for a long time, I know that it's skill. But if you haven't exercised, things need to change to make that work. And so, we're trying to take these lessons that we've learned with our business so we can have an online, more of an international presence. But, that's the first week is learning to get out the door and what are all the things you need to know to be successful with that. Just one other thing that's really important, and this is, if you can involve social, it's really important, particularly with exercise. And, we've learned that the more social you can make it, if we can create friends, so we try to train our coaches, we want to try to make friends. So, like, for example, we have an introduction seminar, and in the introduction seminar, we do a walk test. How fast can you do 400 meters? And the reason we do the walk test is we don't actually necessarily care about it physically. We want to know who you're going to be running around. So we know that, okay, now you've come along to the walk test, and you and I are of similar level. And then what we do for the rest of the seminar, we do all these games, interactions, shared experiences. So you and I are building connections. So then when you turn up to the first session, you already got mates. And then when we start running, we're of similar ability. And then over time, we create a friendship. Now, if I can get you to make a friendship with fitness, fitness is going to be in your life forever, guaranteed. And so, in my world, we really try to kind of subconsciously create that for you. But if you ask someone who's listening to this right now, is how do I engage in creating friendships around fitness? Because if you do that, it's just, I talk back to when I changed from drugs to alcohol. I joined that gym and suddenly I have a new group of friends, and that was one of the reasons I was able to change. So if you can't find environments that create that already, you need to have a bit of an initiative in creating that as well.
So what advice would you give to people that are listening to this and maybe for whatever reason, they can't afford to join your program, or for whatever reason they can't, how can they make friends through fitness?
Yeah, so do you know the funny thing about, I always think, the drug we're trying to sell, and what I mean by that is in any area, the person who's really passionate about something wants to sell that drug, don't they? You know what I mean? Like if you think of your friend who's a musician and you say, oh, I wouldn't mind playing guitar, they jump on board, because they've got the drug they're trying to sell. And I imagine for a lot of people who are listening to this who have been unsuccessful for exercise, is you probably do have some people in fitness who would love for you to be a part of their world. To me, often one of the biggest problems is the barriers that you're putting in front of it, things like comparison. So things like, I go along and I look at them and I just think they're so good, and they just, a really good example was years ago, I was talking to someone who, I was doing a talk on a TV show, and before it, there's a lady who was really overweight, and she was doing some fitness thing, but she told me she hates gyms. And I said, why do you hate gyms? She said, well, I went to the gym once and I was working out, and the reception staff were laughing at me. And I felt awful when she told me this. I thought, oh my God, what a horrible thing to have to go through. And then afterwards, I kind of started to think about the people in my industry. Now, sure, there are the odd person who are a bit kind of, their focus is in the wrong area, but most of the people I know in the fitness industry want to help people. And I actually really doubt if they were laughing at that woman. I really do. I don't think they would have been laughing at this woman who was trying to exercise. They were probably just having a laugh. But the thing was, this woman was so insecure in this environment, anybody who was laughing at her. And so for those who want to get into exercise and listen to this kind of message that social is so important, is what are the things I need to lay away from that would allow me to be open? So find the right people, talk to them and say, look, I'm going to come into this insecure. Here's my entry point right now. How can you help it so I will feel less pressure? So one thing we do with our running group, so for example, we never run to distance. What we do is we run to time. And the reason we do that, we do an out and back run. And why is that? Well, the people who are faster, they go further. But when everyone turns around, the people at the back are now at the front. So now they don't feel like the slowest in the group. And it's things like that. So if you are trying to get involved social, find someone who will really jump on board. Think about the things that are going to work against you. So think about, they think I'm overweight, they think I'm this, they think I'm that. Just go back to your start point comparison. Here's where I started. I was doing nothing today. I did a 2K walk. Talk about how you can be included in the exercise in a way that's inclusive. So like if I'm going to do a business workout, sometimes I'll go and do business workouts for companies. And you've got a really broad range of exercise. So you might have a squat station, but you'll do a squat station in a way where, the total beginner exerciser can do one squat every 20 seconds, whereas the real advanced guys has to do squat burpees. But everyone can feel successful within that station. And so if you're going to talk to your fitness person, say, I want to come along, I want you to help me in a way where I can feel successful in today's workout, and stuff like that. So to me, that that's really important.
So I want to transition here a little bit and ask you some questions more on the business side of things, because I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this podcast right now, and myself, are very much interested in entrepreneurship and business. How did you get your first client? Or I don't know if you remember the first client that you trained one-on-one, but how did that interaction happen?
Oh, yeah, well, that's years ago. I suppose the thing was about me was, and this is going to sound, I have a good personality that it seems to attract people. And, so it wasn't necessarily like, for example, I was kind of lucky because I started teaching group fitness like aerobics and pumps and those types of things. So I kind of had a captive audience. And so it was actually like I started personal training. My first week I had 20 paying clients. So that wasn't necessarily that much of a problem for me. But if I kind of fast forward to when I started my own business, to me, there's some real fundamental things that, any small business owner, I've got a successful business, but it's, we're a small business. We're not turning over 100 million a year. So, but I kind of think that fundamentally, there's kind of stages. And the first stage is where you do everything. So when I think about when I started my running business, it was a very small business, and I did everything. And often a lot of people who do small business, they get caught in that trap of just that's all they ever become. They're just a sole trader, and they just get trapped in that world because they have to do everything. And I realized pretty quickly that I had some really good strengths, but I also had some pretty terrible weaknesses as well. And so I knew that, but at the same time, I couldn't afford to pay somebody. And so one of the things I really worked on early on was, where's the money? And this is a really important thing to think about. I read a book, I can't remember what it was called, a while ago, around this time, and it was a really important book. And they were studying billionaires. They were kind of saying, nowadays, to be a millionaire is actually not that hard, and there's lots of millionaires out there. But what's the difference between the millionaire and a billionaire? So they studied these billionaires, and the big difference was the billionaire always thought, what's my passion and where's the money in my passion? And I think it's a really good way to think about it, because ultimately I don't really care about making that much money. I want to create change. But if I'm not making money, I can't make change. Like, if I can't feed my family, how can I change the world? But if I can make money, then I can have a marketing budget, which means I can have more reach, and so on and so on. So when I first started, it was kind of like, how do I survive in this first period so I'm making money? So you want to identify the thing that I'm working on, the area that I'm passionate about, and where can I put my energy so I can be getting some of that money in that area. And then for me, it was very much kind of, how do I remove myself from the roles that I don't need to be doing? That kind of I love this question of, what's the best use of my time, and how do I spend more time on that? And it's, that's the question I'm always exploring. Like, now with my business, all I'm doing is the things that have the biggest impact on my business. But I couldn't do that straight away. I needed to make money first, and I needed to survive. And then as I kind of progressed, what can I offload right now? So after a while, I was like, I don't need to be doing 2 hours of emails a day. It's a waste of my time. I can pay someone way less than what I can pay myself. So offload that. And so getting to that habit of offloading, and ultimately building systems around it. So, because a lot of problems for people who start businesses, they think it's all dependent on them. And if that's the case, you're never going to go anything bigger than what you can do with your time. And you need to develop trust. You need to develop systems. You need to get great people around you so you can build a bigger world. So those are probably some things. And then lastly, sales and marketing. To me, that's, like for me, my business now, I do product development, I do sales and marketing, and my partner has great operations. And for me, those are, for if your sales and marketing is massive for your business. If you're not sales and marketing, well, you haven't got a business really, have you? So, that's for me probably the big areas.
So when you go to launch a new product, is most of the people buying it come from your podcasts, and they're like constant followers of you, or how do you get sales to that product, let's say?
So to be honest, with my product I have in New Zealand, the running business, because it's not really an online product, to be honest, Facebook's the way to go nowadays. Facebook, our word of mouth is massive. And that's the thing, I think, if you can find a point of difference and be really great at that point of difference, that's really powerful. So if we look at, who's our target market? People who are failing with exercise. Now, if you can get someone who's failed with exercise to succeed, do you think they're going to tell their whole world? And so, that's the thing, is our biggest marketing is to help our people achieve the goal. So if we can be successful in helping you run 5Ks, you're going to tell your 10 friends who haven't exercised for a while. So, to me, in some ways, one of the biggest marketing is to have an amazing product. Because if I have an amazing product, people are going to spread the word. And for us, probably 60% of our clients come from word of mouth, just because we're helping people who haven't been successful. And to be honest, if you're a small business nowadays, for us, Facebook's gold. Facebook marketing's gold. And I've done a lot of courses on how to get the most out of Facebook. I think you should always be upskilling yourself. Google's okay nowadays. I think Google's really good for brand awareness, because you don't pay, they say with marketing that you've got to be seen 9 times before you even understood or even seen. And with Google AdWords, you kind of get that 9 times for free. So it's good to get that exposure, but the targeting of Facebook nowadays is just pretty phenomenal. And so, we do campaigns, obviously, set up to our target market, and that's really successful for us. And then with our 5K, we're doing a digital 5K product really soon, and it's kind of all the lessons we've learned, and I'm trying to make it as great. And I'm actually really proud of what we're doing here. We'll be doing, my podcast, your traditional kind of digital marketing strategies for sure.
Yeah, that's something I'm very interested in. I told you at the beginning, I have a lot of projects going on, but one of the projects that I'm very much interested in is teaching other people how to start e-commerce companies because that's what I
Mm.
did, 4 years ago. And I did come out with I did it last year. I came out with a course just to see if I could do it and, the whole process and just to get it done. And it did decently. It got some sales, but it's definitely something I want to get better at, like being able to sell courses. And because I love teaching, I love learning, and I love teaching. So you
Mm.
mentioned, the billionaires, they try to make money from what they know. I'm not at the billionaire level mindset yet, but like I'm definitely starting to feel the difference. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I was very much, how can I make money? Now it's like, all right, well, how can I make a decent amount of money doing what I like? And I think eventually that mindset scales up. But yeah, so just to very much interested in the courses and marketing.
So yeah, well, I think one thing that's really interesting is what would you do if you didn't need to make money? I'm nearly 40, and so I'm of that moment. In the next 5, 10 years, my partner and I should be totally financially, don't need to earn any more money in our lives. Our investment should be able to just give us an income. So, so then that kind of thing of, well, what would you do if it wasn't about money? And, like, sure, I want my 5K product to make us money because I ultimately, like, I look at people, like the people I admire the most are the ones who can build an audience and then use it for good. And a really good example of this is the crocodile hunter. The crocodile hunter,
Hmm.
the guy
Yeah,
Steve Irwin. Yeah. So I remember he in Australia he has a zoo. It's called the Australian Zoo, and it's by a place called Mooloolaba. And years ago I went to Mooloolaba. And I didn't actually go to Australia Zoo, but in Mooloolaba they had a shop selling all his product. And I just remember walking around and thinking to myself, this guy is just a sellout. Like, I was just like, he'll put his name on anything just to make a buck. And I was kind of a little bit despondent about him. And probably unfairly, but I kind of did. And then I remember a few years later, I listened to and this is before he passed away, but I listened to an interview about him with him, and he was just saying, my goal was to make as much money because every dollar he made, he put that back into buying wildlife land.
mm,
So all his money went into buying more land so that nature could be better, if you know what I mean. And for me, you know, my mission in life is to get to this point where, because one of the biggest problems I see in fitness right now, and it kind of goes back to fit people having fitness is becoming an elite person's thing. There's actually a really good article on Vox the other day about this in America right now, how, look at what happens with Soul Cycle and Equinox and those types of gyms. It's becoming a class system within fitness,
mm.
and there's kind of becoming a haves and have nots. And the interesting thing is that the wealthier demographic tend to be fitter. And so we're just helping the fit people. And so for me, my kind of life's mission is to actually create a world, because I believe fitness makes people's lives better. I fundamentally believe if you are moving in your life, not just for image, I think, focusing on images misses so much about what fitness is about. But I believe if you have exercise in your life, you're a better person, your life is better, and it opens you up to so much growth and character building and ways it opens you up to yourself in other areas of your life. And so for me, my mission is to create products that can help people who want to pay for it, and then actually to put that money into helping the lower demographics of society and to do really powerful things. Like, I love this idea of going into schools and creating fitness products where the kids have leaderships of families exercise, and we use this as an opportunity for kids to actually learn life skills that keep fitness in their life for the rest of life, but actually open them up to being better people. And so for me, it's kind of like, I need to make money because then I can get the best people to create products like that. So that's, I do think, we all want to make money, but what's your legacy? And when it comes to legacy, it's never really about how much you've got in the pocket. It's more about what you've done with your time. And so for me, that's always been, that's my driver.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, for me too, e-commerce is something like it created freedom in my life, and I'm like, hey, it's not
Mm.
going to be for everyone. I think the percentage of people that are interested in even trying to start their own business is much smaller. Everyone wants to be healthy, but for those people, like I have a YouTube channel where I just try to give away as much information as I can, and I'm actually kind of in the point now where I'm probably going to, as far as paid courses, a little bit less. I'm going to give away all my best material for free. And then down the road, if
Mm.
people want some hand holding or some more in depth kind of things, it's like, yeah, sure, you can, the paid course, but it's like you said, just to keep fueling the process. But right now on my YouTube channel, I've got so many videos on there that it's like, if you want to start a successful e-commerce store, that's all you need. Like, you really don't need to pay the $99 for a course, but some people want to go that extra mile. So.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, but isn't it? Because sometimes if you like, it's interesting because we're doing our 5K product coming up really soon, and my partner, my wife, in about 3 weeks from now, Jo, she said to me, "Say, should we get some people to trial it for free?" And I said, well, like the feedback would be good, although we kind of know our product. But what's really fascinating is sometimes when you get that money commitment from people, there's a high level of commitment as well. So it's a hard thing, isn't it? Because like years ago, I learned to meditate, and this is when so I was at university. So I kind of failed, and then I started to learn, and I actually ended up going to university, and I was doing lots of exercise. So I thought to myself, I need to make sure I've got a way to kind of unwind. And so I did this meditation course, and it cost me $1,000 to do this meditation course. And when I was a university student, I didn't have $1,000 to throw around, so it was a lot of money. And I did this course, and I went along, and they taught me a mantra. And my mantra was So all I had to do was go over and over in my head, And I remember thinking, is that what I paid $1,000 for? And while that felt like a total waste of time at the time, because I paid the $1,000, I did it. And like, I've taught many people how to meditate, and you can download apps. Like, everyone wants to meditate, don't they? But most of us don't. And for me, actually, that money commitment made me do it. And so sometimes I get what you're saying, because you're saying that ultimately I just want to have an impact, and I want to allow people, and you've got a lot to share, which is really cool. But also sometimes getting a money commitment can be something that is that next motivator for some people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
It's a motivator for I recently bought, or not recently, last year I bought a course on how to create a better YouTube channel, and the guy
really?
and the guy did a similar thing. He gave away most of his material for free, but I'm like, look, I want to pay so I don't have to search through all your random videos. I just want the streamlined thing, and at the same time, it's like I want that commitment. Like, all right, if I'm paying the $100 for this thing, I'm gonna finish it. Or if I don't pay anything, I know me, and I know that maybe I will still watch the videos, but it's not as structured. It's kind of more sporadic, and I'm like, I want the commitment. I'm serious about this.
So I suppose ultimately for you, what is the ultimate? Like, like if we go right to legacy, like what's the ultimate for you?
I want to help people learn that they can learn things. Kind of like you were talking about when you learn guitar, you realize, oh wow, if I can learn this, I can learn anything. So my big thing is, and through this podcast, through the e-commerce thing, all that is like, hey, there's not this big secret. Because like growing up, I thought, all right, well, either you're good, for instance, good with people. Like either you have good social skills or you don't. And then I started reading books like How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I'm like, oh, you can get better at this? And then the more I learned that, the more I realized it's like marketing. Like, if I can learn marketing, then that opens up a whole new world of things. And so long-term, that's what it is. This podcast and the e-commerce thing is also both about kind of creating freedom for people. So this is
you obviously it's great.
Yeah, so I'm hoping with this kind of to inspire people, with people like you, and then the e-commerce thing is more of a practical, like, all right, here's the steps if you want to use this method, and there's many methods. That's why I like interviewing people like you who do. I mean, we have some very similar things, but you created your freedom through personal training in the first place, and that kind of thing is interesting to me.
So one thing I will kind of going back on what you're saying there, you're kind of saying that it's just a kind of a thing that I often think about is kind of how do I make statements about myself, and it's one thing I've done in my own podcast. I've talked about this, but this kind of idea of limiting statements of self. So I'm not good at. So you might get someone who says I'm not a musician, or fitness. We get all the time. I'm just not good at fitness, or I'm just never going to be an exerciser, and really what you've talked about there is that through some learning and growing, you realize that things were just the development of a skill. And so, like marketing, it's not that I'm not a marketer, I just have to learn the skill of marketing. And it's a really good idea in our own lives to actually start to think about, what are my limiting statements? What are the things that I tell myself I'm not open to? Because once I say I can't exercise, that means I'm not willing to try to exercise. So if someone's listening to us right now and you know that I'm talking to you, and I say, you hear yourself saying I don't exercise, or I don't like exercise, or do you think it's possible that maybe you could like exercise? And so really what we want to do is open you up to a possibility of growth. And in a way I like to think about it is, instead of saying I'm not, saying what's my current skill level in that area. So I'm not an exerciser means I'll never try. Whereas if I kind of say, at a scale of 10, I'm a 1 out of 10 exerciser. Okay, well, that identifies my current skill. But it lets me go, well, if I wanted to improve in exercise, what would a 2 be? And then what happens is you start to look at the problem as in, oh, here's a problem to solve, and what are the solutions I'm going to use to get me to level 2? And what that opens you up to is this idea that I can grow in this area. And when I have these limiting self-statements about myself that say I'm not something, well, you're never going to be able to grow in that area. But if you want to grow in an area and you kind of go, well, what's my skill statement around this? Okay, well, I'm a 1 out of 10, like I'm a pianist. I play piano now. I don't play guitar so much. And I'm an adult learner. So it's a kind of a challenge for me because I don't have that kind of childhood development. But like I sometimes get a bit kind of like I'm not progressing as much. And I've just got to go, you know what? Right now, I'm a 5 out of 10 pianist. And so what's going to get me to 6? Instead of kind of saying I'm never going to get there or so on and so on. And it's just a really good way to frame yourself, which allows you to open yourself up to growth in different areas. And it's kind of what you said there is that, when I first started, I couldn't be this and I couldn't be that. And then I was like, oh, it's just skills. And, I just need to figure out where my skill level is and develop that moving forward.
Absolutely. I want to be respectful of your time, but I have one big question for you that I want to ask before you leave. And this is more of a general question. And it could be about, yeah, okay. Yeah, so it can be whatever you want. But basically, if you had to go back and tell your 20-year-old self a piece of advice, or just for all the listeners out there that are in their 20s, what would you tell your 20-year-old self or the listeners out there?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So one thing I did really well in my 20s was achieve big goals. Like I went from being this total dropkick to understanding how to get success. And, like I won New Zealand Fitness Instructor of the Year 3 times. I became a property investor. I started business, like I figured out how to be successful, and I realized you could just kind of take it to many areas of your life. And in some ways, you go back and tell yourself to change in the past. But the lesson I learned, so then I woke up at 30. I remember at the age of 30, I woke up and I broke up from a relationship that I'd been in for 5 years. And I realized I was actually quite a lonely person. In my pursuit of chasing success and succeeding. And everyone from the outside of my world looked and saw this guy who was just like kind of doing it all. I'd neglected one of the most important things in life, and that was friends and relationships. And they'd come at the cost of trying to do big things. And I literally woke up at 30 and broke up from a relationship. And I remember I was at my family's house on my birthday and I just broke down and cried. And like, I'm not the kind of guy who's just going to break down and cry, if you know what I mean. So I knew something was up, and it just made me realize you've got to keep your friends and family in. And sometimes for people like us who are ambitious and are trying to achieve big things, and, work is important because it defines us and so on, that it can't come at the cost of your friends and your family, because your friends and your family are actually, the more I live, the more I kind of experience this life, that's so important. And, obviously someone who's listening to a podcast like this is probably a bit ambitious, probably trying to, achieve big things, but neglecting those areas. And, obviously the amount of time you may commit when you're trying to achieve big things may be less, but if I could go back in my 20s, I'd say maybe try not to succeed so much and keep your relationships in line. And now 10 years later, I'm nearly 40. I probably haven't achieved as much in my 30s in regards to ticking the boxes that the external world can see, but I'm a much happier, rounded person because I never neglected that side of my life in my 30s. And I have these deep relationships with people that are based on experiences of sharing life together. And, I often think, and it's one of the things I do a little bit of mentoring with people, and what's really fascinating is when people tend to get depressed or sad is they isolate themselves. They pull away from their world. And if we look at what's the biggest punishment we can give someone, it's solitary confinement, isn't it? That's the worst thing we can give to somebody, and penalizing them in the society, other than obviously the death sentence. But, so solitary confinement is the worst thing. And when people struggle, what they can do is they isolate themselves from their world. And one thing we've got to learn to have is the courage in our weak moments to open up to our world, but also develop relationships that would maybe not even make us go to that place. And so if I can give any tip to those in their 20s listening to this, it would be maintain quality relationships, and don't let that be the first thing that goes off the list when you're trying to achieve big things.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot, and something that I've been neglecting for the last few years, and definitely part of the reason I spent the last few years traveling around, and now I recently moved to Santa Monica, and I'm actually signed a 1-year lease, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to focus on the friend thing. So it's good to hear you say that, Definitely something I
Yeah,
need
well,
to do.
yeah, because it's yeah. I mean, sometimes it's hard for because it's the problem is when we like one thing we often do in life is we get so strong in one area and we've neglected other areas to get strong in that one area. But then because we're so weak in the neglected areas, we just put more energy into the thing we're strong in. So you'll see it with the person who's overcommitted to a business life. They're workaholics. They're working 60, 70 hours a week, and they've neglected their family, they've neglected relationships, their health, and so on. But they're so bad at those other things. Why would you put energy into it? Because it just makes you feel bad. So you just keep doing the thing you're good at, even though the return on investment is actually not that good for you. And it's more courageous to let go of the thing that you're really strong in to a level that allows you to develop the side where you're weak. And that can be a hard thing when like obviously you've done really well and you've got freedom, but maybe in some ways it's trapped you a little bit as well. So I don't know because I don't know you that well, but you know what I mean? Like it's those
Yeah,
sorts of things to think about.
absolutely. Bevan, where can people find out more about you and all the projects you're doing?
So my website is stephenjamesisles.com. I'll give you a link because no one will be able to spell it. But
Yep.
admittedly, I'm updating my website pretty soon. But the product we're going to be releasing, the 5K product, for those who would be interested in that, it's called My 5K Dream, and there will be on my5kdream.com. It's not ready yet. It won't be coming out till about April 2017. But if you are listening after the fact, because I know podcasts are like that, you can go and check out My 5K Dream, and maybe if you are someone who's excited, you can learn some of my tricks to get you to run 5K.
Awesome. Bevan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. And if you did, make sure you hit the big red subscribe button down below. You can also check me out on Facebook and on Twitter. And I release a new video every Monday. And by hitting that subscribe button, you'll get those new videos every Monday. And this is really a podcast. It's also a website. You can check out the website. It's howtodoyour20s.com. I'll put a link right over here as well. And what it's all about is trying to improve your life. And we specifically focus on things that people in their 20s are interested in. So make sure you like the video if you liked it. Subscribe, like us on Facebook and Twitter, whatever. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again on another video.